wake up, check the time, and before your feet even touch the ground, the stress is already there. Not loud, not dramatic, just a quiet weight sitting in your chest. You tell yourself it's normal. Everyone is stressed at work. Deadlines, expectations, responsibilities. That's just how life is, right? But what if the stress isn't really about the work at all? Most people never stop long enough to ask that question. They move fast, stay busy, and drown the discomfort in noise, emails, meetings, notifications, endless tasks. Stress becomes part of the routine, something you carry without questioning. Yet if you stayed completely still for just 5 seconds, no phone, no thoughts of what's next, no pressure to perform, you might begin to notice something unexpected. Those 5 seconds are uncomfortable because they are honest. In that brief pause, the mind can't hide behind productivity. The body speaks. The tension reveals itself. And suddenly, stress stops being a problem to escape and becomes a message, waiting to be understood. Not a sign that you are weak, but a signal that something inside you is asking for attention. This is not about quitting your job or blaming your workplace. It's about awareness, because the moment you slow down, even for 5 seconds, you realize that stress is rarely caused by what you do, but by what you suppress. And once you see that, everything begins to change. Most people believe their stress comes directly from their job, the workload, the deadlines, the pressure, the expectations. It feels logical to blame the environment, because that's where the tension shows up. But if the job itself were the true cause, everyone in the same position would feel the same level of stress. They don't, and that difference is the first clue. Stress doesn't start in the task. It starts in the meaning you attach to the task. The job is only a trigger. What it really awakens are your inner fears, unmet needs, past experiences, and silent expectations. The same email can feel neutral to one person and threatening to another. The same deadline can feel motivating to one employee and paralyzing to someone else. The work is the same. The inner response is not. When you pause for just 5 seconds, you begin to notice this. The tension you feel is not about the spreadsheet, the meeting, or the supervisor. It's about what those things represent to you. Maybe they awaken a fear of failure. Maybe they touch an old wound where you felt unrecognized or undervalued. Maybe they remind you of a time when your worth depended on performance. The job simply opens the door to what was already there. Work often activates the part of you that wants to be enough. Enough to be respected. Enough to be secure. Enough to feel safe in your place. When that sense of enough is fragile, stress fills the gap. It pushes you to overthink, overperform, and overextend yourself. Not because the job demands it, but because something inside you're still trying to prove its value. This is why stress persists even on quiet days. Even when the workload is manageable, your body stays tense. Your mind stays alert. The job has awakened a constant inner vigilance. And unless you slow down long enough to recognize it, you'll keep trying to fix the outside while ignoring what's happening within. The moment you understand this, stress stops being a punishment and becomes a mirror. It shows you where you are disconnected from yourself. It points to the areas where you need clarity, boundaries, or reassurance. The job didn't create your stress, it revealed it. And what is revealed can finally be understood, addressed, and transformed. Behind almost every form of stress at work, there is fear. Not the kind that makes you run, but the quiet kind that sits in the background of your thoughts and tightens your body without asking permission. This fear rarely announces itself clearly. Instead, it disguises itself as urgency, perfectionism, overthinking, or constant pressure to perform. One of the most common fears is the fear of failure. It's the fear of not meeting expectations, your own or someone else's. Every task becomes a test, every deadline a judgment. You don't just want to do the job. You want to prove that you are capable, reliable, worthy. This fear turns normal responsibility into emotional weight. Even small mistakes feel dangerous, as if they threaten your identity rather than your performance. Another powerful fear is the fear of disappointing others. You may stress because you don't want to let your boss down, your team down, or even your family down. Approval becomes currency, and stress becomes the price you pay to keep it. You say yes when you should say no. You carry more than you should, and slowly your nervous system stays on edge, always trying to anticipate what others expect from you. There is also the fear of losing security. For many people, work is not just a job, it is survival. The fear of losing income, stability, or status creates a constant background anxiety. Even when nothing is wrong, your body acts as if something could go wrong at any moment. This fear keeps you alert, tense, and unable to fully relax, even outside of work hours. If you stop for 5 seconds, you might feel this fear before you can name it. A tight chest, shallow breathing, a racing mind. These are not signs of weakness. They are signs that your system is trying to protect you. Stress is fear trying to keep you safe, but it doesn't know when to stop. The problem is not the fear itself, it's letting fear run your life without awareness. Once you see it, once you name it, its power weakens. Fear loses its grip when it is acknowledged instead of ignored. And in that moment, stress no longer controls you. It becomes a signal guiding you toward understanding, balance, and inner strength. One of the deepest sources of stress at work is the feeling that you are no longer in control. Decisions are made above you. Rules change without explanation. Goals are imposed without your input. You show up, do your part, and yet much of what affects your day is outside your influence. Over time, this creates a quiet sense of powerlessness that wears you down. When you feel powerless, your body stays in a state of resistance. You may not openly rebel, but internally you tighten. Your jaw clenches. Your shoulders rise. Your mind replays situations you couldn't change. Stress grows not because you are doing too much, but because you feel trapped in a system where your voice doesn't matter. And the more trapped you feel, the more exhausted you become. This lack of control often creates frustration that has nowhere to go. You can't express it freely. You can't always walk away, so it turns inward. It becomes tension, irritability, and constant mental pressure. Even small requests feel heavy because they remind you that choice has been taken away from you. If you pause for 5 seconds, you may notice this resistance clearly. A tight stomach, a sense of heaviness, a thought like, "I have no choice." That thought is powerful and dangerous because it makes stress feel permanent. But it's only partially true. You may not control the system, the decisions, or the environment, but you still control your response. You control how much you internalize what is imposed on you. You control where you place your energy, your attention, and your boundaries. This inner control is often forgotten, but it is real. The moment you recognize this, something shifts. Powerlessness loses its grip. Stress begins to soften because you stop fighting what you cannot change and start reclaiming what you can. Control doesn't always mean changing your situation. Sometimes it means changing how deeply it owns you. In a world that rewards speed, movement, and constant productivity, staying still feels unnatural. It can even feel wrong. You're taught to keep going, to stay busy, to fill every moment with action. So when you stop, truly stop, for just 5 seconds, it can feel uncomfortable, almost threatening. That discomfort is exactly why it takes courage. Staying still means you are no longer running. No distractions, no tasks to hide behind, no urgency to protect you from your own thoughts. In those 5 seconds, there is nowhere to escape. You feel what you've been carrying. You notice the tension in your body, the noise in your mind, the emotions you've been postponing. And that honesty requires bravery. Most people avoid stillness because they're afraid of what they might discover. Maybe it's exhaustion. Maybe it's anger. Maybe it's the realization that something needs to change. Movement keeps these truths at a distance. Stillness brings them close. That's why even a brief pause can feel heavy, but also why it's powerful. Those 5 seconds are not about fixing anything. They are about witnessing, breathing without control, observing without judgment, letting the body speak before the mind interrupts. In that moment, stress begins to loosen, not because your problems disappear, but because you stop resisting your inner reality. Staying still is an act of self-respect. It's choosing awareness over avoidance. It's telling yourself, even silently, I matter enough to listen. And once you experience that, even for 5 seconds, you realize that clarity doesn't come from doing more. It comes from being present. And presence, practiced in small moments, has the power to change everything.